my stomach just goes.
It's not bad though, because if your stomach does it again, it takes that out.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Welcome to Behind the Scenes.
Yeah.
And
It is a glorious day today.
it is. Good afternoon, evening, Alejandro.
Sad for you, happy for me.
We're counting down to Ethan leaving.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Just kidding, he's my favorite. I like to kiss him. With armadillo kisses.
Oh my gosh.
They're like butterfly kisses, but more disturbing.
My tongue is like razors. And when I kiss, I kill.
Alejandro is deadly. And we have
a truck.
And
How dare you bring up my nemesis, the trucks. Oversized mammals think they own the pathway.
They made the path.
oh my gosh.
Alright, we haven't even started yet.
We haven't even got started. Yeah, no doubt. And of course, if you're watching behind the scenes, you know that most of our guests are already here, even though they're not here to begin with, and then we bring them in, including Corbyn Snodgrass.
I'm here.
Go, Corbyn.
Yay.
Your first time on?
Yeah.
Yeah, exciting. All right.
I like the word first.
Yes.
It implicates that it's not the last.
Absolutely. We'll see how that works out.
Yeah.
The moment of truth.
So sure we just began.
Here we go.
Begun.
All right, are we ready to do this thing?
We are.
You ready? Everything's happy?
Just checking.
Welcome to the State of the Ozarks podcast. This is Josh Heston, editor-in-chief.
And this is Ethan Grubaugh.
And we're talking about our Ozarks.
Your community.
And this episode, I've been thinking about, has been brought to you by Vintage Paris Coffee Shop and Roastery with Matt and Jessica Farmer.
Artist Christine Reitzel, Beauty from Light.
Josh Huxtable, State of the Ozarks patron.
Stafford's Barbershop and Shave Company, the place for men in downtown Branson.
Shepherd the Musical, rediscovering America's story.
Blue Rock Print Company, upgrade your look.
And the Taney County Health Department, creating opportunities for healthy lives in our community. Good, folks. And let me check here real quick. No, you're good. Next week, Matt and Jessica Farmer will be in the studio.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Maybe they'll bring coffee.
Maybe.
Or wine. Or something. Hopefully they'll bring something.
Yeah. Themselves.
They'll bring, that's the most important thing.
Yes.
That is the absolutely most important thing. And of course, this is, we'll talk about this more later, but it is a little bit bittersweet. We are now counting down the days for you to be leaving.
Yes.
And you will be missed.
Oh, thanks.
You're welcome.
I'll miss you all.
Of course, you're not going to be terribly far away, but I'm assuming you'll be a bit preoccupied on Monday night, so you will not be part of the podcast.
I'll only be in Bolivar.
Yeah.
But
Bolivar.
But if I were to come down here to record the podcast just to go back, that's a lot of gas.
That's a lot out of the way.
Yeah.
It really is. And hopefully we can, get in a couple of holiday podcasts here and there.
Oh, yeah.
Some fun.
Holiday, hopefully summers.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff like that, yeah.
Absolutely. So you're not gone.
No.
You are transitioning.
Yes.
And we're proud about that. So let's jump into, of course, we've got a great new guest. Corbyn Snodgrass is coming on board soon. But go ahead and bring up that the weekly and tell me what you thought about it. This was a unique issue for me.
This one, almost poetic, I think. Like just reading it as, because normally you're telling like a story or something. I mean, you still do, but like more of a direct.
There's a thing.
Here's the thing. Here's what's going on. Here's where I am during this thing. Whereas this one, it's it's almost more of a poem.
Yeah.
Reading it and obviously reminiscing on childhood memories and sugar donuts and. Man,
yeah.
That sounds good.
Sugar donut. Yeah, and then
cinnamon sugar donuts.
Cinnamon sugar donuts. Those were,
cinnamon. Sugar.
Oh, and then there's the recipe.
Yes.
Well, I'm gonna. We've got a pretty good recipe going on. That's the chocolate angel food cake, isn't it?
Yep, Donnie and Joshua's good chocolate angel food cake.
That is actually, I should have the card with me. The card's in the kitchen with my mom's handwriting.
Oh.
It is a recipe that was a recipe that we made together. It is actually a sponge cake. So it is not your traditional really tall angel food cake. It's more, a couple inches high and then in a pan. But it has this really creamy angel food cake texture and then it has a lot of chocolate. It is a lovely combination. So good memories there. And then to a certain degree, we're just kind of looking at a plug for Instagram and of course ourselves.
Yes, because what better than to plug ourselves into our own show?
Absolutely, we are just that amazing.
Yes, in case you're wondering, I am Ethan Grubaugh.
And I am Joshua Heston. But yeah, folks can, if they're listening to us on iTunes, they can also find us on YouTube at Soto Media.
Yeah.
And we have nearly all, not all, because we didn't start doing the behind the scenes recording right off the bat.
No, it took us a couple
months, I think. I have it here. Let's see. While I'm looking it up, but we do the behind the scenes. Yeah. So you can see how goofy we are in real life.
So we record all of our podcasts on this super high tech camera. Set on this super awesome multi-million-dollar tripod.
Yes, I spent a lot on that tripod. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 8 books stacked together.
Well, it's not the same 8 books. It varies from time to time.
It does. Depends on what I'm reading. It
doesn't have to be 8. Just, stack of books.
Nice height. Yeah, just as long as it works.
Yeah.
And it does. And of course, shameless plug for Apple iPhones because that's what I'm using to record the behind the scenes on. But it looks good.
Right.
Sounds good.
Absolutely.
And you can follow us at Soto Media on YouTube.
Yes.
And I looked it up. Our first... we started the YouTube doing the behind the scenes on the first of the year.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, for some reason, I thought that we
had started. No, it's
had started a lot earlier than that.
Yeah.
Because we started recording in August to prepare for Soto Fest.
I know. This year has gone really fast, but we've crammed a lot in it.
Yes, we have.
Yeah, the first recording was on January 15th, 2019.
Wow.
Our first.
Behind the scenes.
Yes. Now we are coming up on celebrating because I'm trying to find here. It was in August 28th was our very first podcast.
So we're almost at a year.
Yeah,
of
we are
podcast.
coming in on a year, which is kind of exciting.
Yeah.
And then, so I do want to talk about this a little bit. The photo that we used to promote Instagram.
Yeah, it looks interesting.
Yeah, I was curious what you thought about that.
I'm looking at it right now. Are those trees is it like a cage with trees?
It is a cage with some heavy vines. I think they're wisteria vines encasing the cage.
Okay, that looks like the tunnel that the Dementors attacked Harry Potter.
It really does. It really does. And
but then the cage aspect of it reminds me of professional wrestling. So
that's
so
you have effectively summed up Six Flags St. Louis.
I've never been there, so I will take your word for it.
It's fun. It's fun. That's actually where the photo is from, with Six Flags in St. Louis.
Oh.
And of course, my niece and I were there earlier this month, and it was weird. It was the Monday after 4th of July, and I was expecting this huge crowd. My niece actually spent lots of her money, fortunately not my money, on fast passes. And then there was nobody there.
Oh.
So.
Well, I mean, it's a precaution because it is summer.
Yeah, it could really go either way. I think my guess is that everybody at Six Flags was in St. Louis and they all went to Six Flags for the 4th of July holiday. And the Monday after, people were like, no.
Yeah. Either.
We've already been there. Or we've left.
Or they're still hungover.
And that too.
Yeah.
Or they blew up with fireworks. There's nothing left of them. I don't know.
Or a combination.
Maybe just a glorious, beautiful combination. Yeah, actually, reading a story about it's a Greek myth part of the Greek mythos involving a not so much of a hero named Pentheus. Anyway, I think Dionysus ends up rending his body in multiple pieces before the story's over. So maybe that's what happened.
Yeah, that ends up happening like a lot of Greek stories. Is someone gets dismembered by some kind of angry deity.
Welcome to Greek mythology. Yay, dismemberment is fun.
And there's probably a child somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. So coming back to Six Flags, we stay back to Six Flags.
I got whiplash from that transition.
Who needs a segue? But with that to me, Six Flags and a lot of places like it are this almost weird in-between place. Now, something that a lot of people don't realize is in our past, Western civilization, great cathedrals or holy places was essentially Disney World. People made pilgrimages by the thousands to these locations, and oftentimes the ancient city that developed around the holy place was basically there to sell souvenirs and have hotels.
Just like when monks would travel to Jerusalem,
Mm-hmm.
or just to Israel in general, and it was basically like walking into Branson.
That's a weird thought.
Yeah.
It's a really weird thought. So,
Hopefully there's less sequin.
Lots of... Now I have at least 3 images in my mind I didn't want. But along with that,
You are welcome.
yeah, thank you. You're making your exodus in style. But with that, there's something. So I'm gonna fall back a little bit on my appreciation for Celtic mysticism.
Mm-hmm. I haven't heard one of these in a while.
No doubt, has been a while. Imholt was so far away. But with that, many in Western, of course, when I'm talking about Western civilization, pre-America, pre-United States, we're talking about Europe. Many of the really important holy places were sacred sites before they were holy places recognized by the Roman Catholic Church. And if you take the Celtic viewpoints, for example, these places were considered holy places because oftentimes they were considered thin places where there is a thin boundary between this and the other world. And that's what made them sacred. There was something about them that there was some sort of the sense of crossover between the two. And I think I'm really going off topic. I had no idea I was even thinking about this recently. But I think that a lot of our theme parks function in a similar way to the human psyche. That it's a liminal space where reality and non-reality converge. And to a large degree, I got the sense. There were quite a few people when we got to Six Flags in the afternoon. We got there about 2, but Viviana and I were gonna max out our time, so we stayed until close, which was 10.
Oh wow!
So 9 or 10. So we were there. It was getting dark, and more people had left, and we're in this almost otherworldly environment because you have the huge rides and you have the all of these things, but then you have almost no people within that space. It a little bit eerie, a little bit poignant, and then a whole lot of fun because they have a water boggin ride that you can ride in the dark, and it's really, you get splashed with water and it was really hot. So lots and lots of fun. I got a t-shirt. But to me, that photo, and I do try to find, I don't always succeed, but I do try to find photos that really resonate to make those Instagram posts. Mm-hmm. And that was one of them, that this was this weird liminal space, and there was this massive tunnel made out of wisteria vines, and then there was nobody walking through it but me and my niece. So it was very odd.
Could have put her in a black cloak and let her run around like taking pictures.
She would have done it. She's already a Slytherin. She is a Slytherin. Her mom is a Gryffindor, and I'm a Ravenclaw. So makes for interesting conversations.
Yeah, I never learned what
Oh,
one I was going to be in.
It's not too late. I'm guessing Gryffindor. Not feeling the Hufflepuff vibe.
Oh, really?
No, not really. I'm thinking Gryffindor.
What is a Hufflepuff?
Well, they like to cook, so I'm surprised I'm not one of them.
Yeah, I don't like to cook. I really do not.
I think kind of the tendency toward stability and closeness to the earth.
So hippies.
And hobbits.
Hoppies?
Hoppies. The hoppies are coming. That's my sign. Oh, I think we better get Corbyn in here.
Yeah.
And we will resume this conversation soon.
All right.
Transition.
Wow,
You're
Hop in.
exciting. Hop in.
Hop in.
Pop it.
Hobby horse. Hobby horse.
Oh, yeah. So let's just get you going. And you just, yeah, you're good. Perfect.
I'm good. Perfect.
That's actually really good.
That's what I like to hear. Is I'm good. Perfect.
And then whenever you're ready, you can start.
All right. Corbyn, it is good to have you on the podcast.
It's good to be on the podcast.
Oh, it's we're gonna jump into some other stuff here in a minute, but well, we can talk about the editorial. I want to talk about the editorial, but I also want to talk about sort of your journey to get here, because I find that interesting.
It is a journey.
And of course, for people who don't know, you are our newest, freshest State of the Ozarks intern.
I love that title. Can we just keep me as the freshest
The
intern?
freshest intern. You are the freshest intern. Recently shipped in from the boot heel of Missouri. And a big box of peaches. I've been dealing a lot with the farmer's market. Can you tell?
Only slightly.
just a smidge. Let's jump into this with the editorial. I'm putting you on the spot, but of course you're on the email list. You get the editorials. You get all the stuff that
Yes,
the random things that fall out of my brain called been thinking about. Of course, Ethan and I brought it up to begin with. What did you think about this editorial? I just want to get your opinion.
I think if I could sum it up in one word, at least the written aspect of the editorial, it would have been somber.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed that you were in a really reflexive place in your memories and the nostalgia. Maybe a tear shed. One manly tear.
That's
of course,
fair.
while you're drinking Vintage Paris coffee.
Vintage Paris coffee, yeah, or other things too. But
That Vintage Paris also sells.
yeah, I do. Of course, this quote is attributed to Ernest Hemingway, but I have yet to find whether it is actually Ernest Hemingway's quote. It has been attributed to it.
Okay.
The general paraphrase is "write drunk and edit sober."
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that how this was written?
That one was not. At least a good chunk of Plague Child's Doctor. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I subscribe to that, and but it's funny because of course you're a student, you're a college student at this point,
yes.
with a lot of writing. One, I don't recommend that right at the moment because wait until much later.
Actually, let me go a step further and say that has not happened.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm looking at the camera right now.
Yes.
Watch behind the scenes.
Yeah, and I believe you. No, I do, and I'm editor in chief. What I say goes. But
That's right.
It's one of those things that I think we put a lot of emphasis on. Well, a lot of emphasis on writing correctly. That there's a lot of pressure to say, should it be this, should it be that, it's got to be right, it's got to be right from the beginning, and it's very hard to, you second guess yourself a lot, and fortunately, I can do this. Of course, I can do it the Ernest Hemingway way. But fortunately, at this point, I've done so much writing. I mean, I'd written a lot before I started State of the Ozarks, and then of course for the last 12 years, writing is a daily requirement. It is a weekly requirement. It does not let up, which is fine by me. I totally embrace that. But there is a point that you have to throw your inhibitions out the window, and you just do it. You just write, and you can't second guess yourself. And this is again off on kind of a tangent, but if I were to give advice to any budding writer, I would say just put yourself in situations that you don't have the luxury to second guess yourself.
Yeah.
And I think in many ways, and with the right program, academically that can be really good because it can be really freeing. But I also think that a lot of our traditional education system puts so much an emphasis on doing it right that it does force us to second guess ourselves.
No, I very much sympathize with that. I think the spirit of the quote is true. Now, I might not be writing drunk, but I certainly want to write. And if, as so many people do, get caught up in how do I construct the perfect sentence for this paragraph, for this idea that I'm trying to communicate, and if you don't sometimes just get that on the paper, I mean, you own a thesaurus. You can just go back later.
You can go back and fix it.
A thesaurus is my best friend.
Fair enough. Yeah, and it just there's something really freeing when you reach that point that you go, I can just do this and I don't have to worry about it.
Yes, where you can write for writing's sake.
Yes, and long way around the block, but it was I really try to feel my way through what is going to be right for each editorial or each moment.
Yes.
And a few scant days before I was actually due to get this ready and send it to Jared to have him work his magic on it and make the email look amazing, which he does, I was like, what am I going to write about? And I was thumbing through one of my old journals. And this is actually a journal entry.
Oh, wow.
From a number of years ago. It doesn't specifically say so, but it is in memory of my mom, and it indirectly references her absence, and it was very, very emotional for me. It was very emotional when I wrote it, and it was just stream of consciousness. It was entirely stream of consciousness. Somewhere around here, I have the actual journal, and you can barely read it. I think if it was anybody other than me, I'd be like, I'm not sure that's even a language.
Yes.
But I put that together, and so once in a while, State of the Ozarks for me becomes a platform of catharsis, of just putting my heart out there. And I would really encourage you, like anybody who wants to write, don't be afraid to do that. There is catharsis in it. And I think it's important. So that's where that actually came from. The Halley's Comet. We did go look for Halley.
Wow.
We all as a family got up way early, like 2 a.m, to go look and see if we could see Halley's Comet, and we couldn't. But one of the 2 small grocery stores in my hometown had just, as part of this thing, they had just gone to being open 24 hours, which is like really weird. This was the 80s. And of course you can look it up. I don't remember. Now it's like 85, 86. I'm trying to remember. Whatever year Halley's Comet was here.
Yes.
It was that winter. And I was a little kid. And I remember being out in the dark. None of us were astronomers. As far as I know, we were looking at the wrong corner of the sky. I have no idea. But we looked, and the sky was really pretty, and there was lots of stars, but we didn't see anything that looked like a comet. And then, because the grocery store was open, which was really, really weird. I mean, of course, this was an easy 10 years before a proliferation of Walmart supercenters. So we went to the grocery store, and it was such a... It was its own liminal space to be, this in-between space, to be in the grocery store that myself and my siblings had grown up in, only it's like 4 a.m.
Very late.
Yeah, there's like one person at the cash register.
That's a different grocery store.
It was completely new. And we went through and we got, and this was also new for us, the pre-packaged glazed donuts in the box, and got them and brought them home and put them in the oven, and had fresh, crispy, gooey, delicious, sugar glazed freezer donuts at like 5 a.m. And then we all pretty much just passed out and, woke up about, 11 and went from there.
That's a memory worth writing about.
It was good. So we missed the comment, found the donuts, which sums up a lot of my life actually. And but with that, I really wanted to dig into how you came about, because the first time that you and I actually ran across one another ostensibly or crossed paths was the July Art Walk.
Yes.
The first Friday Art Walk. You were there, but we really didn't have the chance to actually connect.
No, not really. I was kind of a passive observer at that moment. Someone who just enjoyed, say, the Ozarks and the Art Walk.
So coming back to that, you were familiar with State of the Ozarks, and you were also familiar with our podcast.
Yes.
So tell me about that.
Well, I would say that the first interaction I ever had with the concept of State of the Ozarks happened sometime last year. Don't really even know when it was, but I was at Vintage Paris with some friends, as you do, and I recognized a gentleman, Dr. Hayden Head, and I went up, and there was a bunch of people out on the patio, the courtyard, and I asked him, what's going on right here? What's happening? And he told me, there's this guy, Joshua Heston, and he's doing all this stuff for the community, and, literature, awesome. And, it's Dr. Head, and it was a pretty great conversation. I wasn't necessarily really invested in what he was saying at the moment. And then I came across the podcast I've been thinking about, which is an incredible production, if I do say so myself. And I listened to it, and I think the first episode I listened to was the one about the Toby Show.
Okay.
And just hearing the reverence that you guys had about the Ozark history and our community, which are things that I've loved for so long. And I've grown up in this area, Branson, Hollister area, with a very short stint in Omaha, Arkansas, which, as Ethan told me, is basically the same thing. And I would agree with that sentiment. It's basically the same thing. And it was so freeing to hear the podcast, and then, of course, you guys were promoting Art Walk and Writers Artist Night, and I came out to Writers Artist Night, then I came to Art Walk, and then that's just how it took off. I mean, it took off from there.
Yeah, and then you did follow us on Instagram.
Yes.
And then I believe you followed me on Instagram.
I did, yes.
And then I followed you back, and then I messaged you, and then we met at Vintage Paris, and then we talked for like 3 hours.
Yes, we did. And it was a hot day.
Yes, it was. Out in the courtyard. All the cool stuff tends to...
Some very sweet old people asked us for our seats indoors.
Yes, they did. But they asked very graciously.
Yes.
Well, we for the record now, we sort of volunteered them up.
Yes.
They were looking a little pensive.
They didn't... I don't think they had been to Vintage Paris before.
No,
They were clearly not local.
No.
And I think, it is, somewhat the responsibility of someone like us to create the best environment for, a non-local to experience some of the best that we have to offer, which is Vintage Paris.
I agree. And and they were really sweet. They were very grateful.
Very sweet, very grateful.
And I it's that's perfectly normal for our community, largely.
Yes.
But you put yourself in sort of the other place, going to a different place,
yes,
and going in and having random people just be like, "Hey, do you want our seats? You can have our seats. We'll give them your seats." That doesn't always happen. Something you said that I want to dig into. You said it was very freeing to be hearing this perspective about the Ozarks. What
yes.
was that? What was it that was freeing?
Well, for me, in my experience, now I went to high school at School of the Ozarks, which is the laboratory school on the campus of College of the Ozarks, which is where I'm attending now as a sophomore. Now, when I was in high school, it was kind of the common idea, the zeitgeist of our school was just that, the Ozarks is lame, and that, people from this area are pretty close-minded, and that there's just not a lot of cultural depth to, Hollister, Branson, Forsyth, and these surrounding areas. And just being the person that I am, I think that because most people believed that, something deep within me had to reject that social norm.
And this is why we get along.
And what I found, though, is that in rejecting that norm is that there was truth to the fact that the people here are intelligent and kind and compassionate, and that the community that has kind of taken a root in the Ozarks and what you've been doing, kind of cultivating that community through State of the Ozarks, is a worthwhile pursuit. And I think it was freeing for me to know that I wasn't alone in loving something that felt unloved. And I think that to me was a really valuable thing to have in college, because a lot of people at C of O aren't necessarily from this area, and of course they don't have any natural appreciation for the Ozarks, and sometimes it can feel kind of lonely over there, being in my hometown and not knowing anything or not knowing anyone is.
That's a unique experience.
It's a bizarre experience. It must be like going into a grocery store at 4 a.m.
It is a liminal space. Start checking cupboards and seeing like if you can get into Narnia.
That's right.
I think, and within that, that concept of liminal. I'm just jumping all over the place, but that concept of liminal space is what C.S. Lewis was really pulling from.
Yes.
From a folkloric perspective, in this idea that there's some places that you can go through.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. And there's a lot. We're going to really start digging a lot more into these things, and I'm excited that you're along for the ride.
I'm glad to be along for the ride.
And something that was a really unique experience, not terribly long ago, I had the chance to finally get to Bluff Dwellers Cave in Knoll, Missouri.
Okay.
Over in the corner. It's almost in Arkansas and it's almost in Oklahoma, basically like 40 miles south of Joplin.
Okay.
Is the area. It's also Vance Randolph's stomping grounds as well. So
okay.
Vance was an anthropologist who dedicated his life to the Ozarks in the 1930s through the 1950s.
Sounds like an exciting man.
He was. He was a bit of a rogue and a bit of a renegade.
So you loved him?
Yeah, I do. I do. Vance is one of a handful of heroes that I have. And finally got to go to Bluff Dwellers Cave. I'd read about it, I had seen brochures, so on and so forth. Finally got to go. First of all, and nobody's paying me to say this because they're not a member, they have nothing to do with State of the Ozarks, but oh my gosh, if anybody gets a chance to go to Bluff Dwellers Cave, they should go to Bluff Dwellers Cave because it is gorgeous.
Wow.
And very unique, very different than any other cave that I have been in around here. The tour was excellent. Was very historical and very, very well done. But going through the cave, I kept having these weird moments of deja vu. And I'm like, why does this seem familiar? And it wasn't because of other caves that I had been in. What I finally realized was it was reminding me of pieces of the old pieces of Silver Dollar City, like the mine, like going down the mine, like the flooded mine, to a certain degree, Grandfather's Mansion, old parts of Silver Dollar City, like the Andy Miller era, original parts of Silver Dollar City that have this weird Ozarkian resonance.
Back when Silver Dollar City was good.
Oh my gosh, get us in trouble, but we don't care. I'm just
kidding. It was.
But it was very different.
There's truth rooted in every joke, though. I will say that.
It has changed a lot, and we are an independent platform, so we can say that.
I think people are probably like, that guy's, 20 years old? He doesn't know what he's talking about at all.
There's just, and with Silver Dollar City, I feel like Silver Dollar City is one of those liminal spaces as well. There's something very powerful and unique and resonating about certain spaces. And I don't know this, I've not read this, but having been to Bluff Dwellers Cave and been now to, of course, having largely grown up going to Silver Dollar City, I was actually 20 the first time I ever went to Silver Dollar City, so I've been going there for 20 years. And I just swear that there was part of the original creative team understood and went around the Ozarks and knew the substrate, the foundations of the Ozarks, of what made the Ozarks the Ozarks. So then when they were creating unique things at Silver Dollar City, it was not a facade, it was not a pastiche, it was, we are paying homage to something that we have genuinely connected with. And that was, there are pockets of that, and there are still pockets of that even in show business in Branson, though it's, people can overlook it. That's one of the reasons I think the Toby Show is so amazing, being rebirthed out at Shepherd of the Hills.
Yes.
It does exist, but you have to know where to look for it. And I really think for an untrained eye or for an outsider, you can't necessarily tell the difference between an homage and a pastiche. That sense, one of them is this loving, representation, and the other is just saying, hey, let's fake it because it looks good and it'll sell. Yes.
And that's difficult to discern today.
It is.
I think it's so commonplace to even, the advent of things, and I don't want to be that guy, but like an Instagram, are training yourself to package yourself as though you are a commodity.
Yes.
And almost sell that commodity in exchange for social profit. And that, in essence, to me, is what some things can feel like in the modern, Branson area, especially. And, I don't begrudge anyone that. I know that people have to run a business and they have to make money, but I think that's why I value so much and almost find something like State of the Ozarks to be a vestige of a sacred space that I can go to where we appreciate the Ozarks, we appreciate our local artisans and artists, and we appreciate our local businesses who are also trying to make a buck out here on these stony hills.
And it's not easy to make a living in a pile of rocks.
It is not easy to make a living in a pile of rocks.
And yet here we are. So it's pretty special.
That's right, and I think it's extremely special.
Yeah.
I believe in sacred spaces, and because I think why my friends wanted to leave so bad is that nothing here was sacred to them.
Yes.
And when nothing is sacred to you, you want to reject that. And for me, something was very sacred about this area. For me, a place that I found recently that I keep finding these nuggets of just beautiful places. It's down by Table Rock Dam. And when you drive, there's a scenic look right there, right next to the dam for like when the floodgates are open and you can see that.
Yes.
And there's a little road offshoot there, and you drive down there and you get to this point where the trees are giant, just outrageously tall. Nothing like I've ever seen in this area, and I just had to stop and take it in. It felt as though there was, what's that word you're using?
The liminal space?
The liminal space.
Yes.
A beautiful, where I could almost touch some divinity there.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Pretty amazing.
And I know the space you're talking about.
Yes.
And I concur. Oh my gosh, we're gonna have to have you back in as a guest, and I appreciate it, Corbyn. This is awesome.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Switch it out.
And back to
See, this is what's great about the behind the scenes. There's people are like, what is happening?
professionalism.
It's like they make it seem like, it's a big deal, and like they're just getting up and
Oh,
That's
with
all
the
him.
music and all that. It sounds like this thing.
That's all him.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful.
It is beautiful.
But there's something beautiful about that
Just,
too.
just
Well,
rocking it out.
Oh, thanks.
Oh, here we are.
Alright.
All right. So, Ethan,
Yes,
good to have you back.
it is good to be back.
Absolutely.
I traveled a long way to get here.
I know you did.
Across many mountains.
Did you bring donuts?
No, the wolves ate them.
That's fair.
Yeah.
And Little Red Riding Hood too.
Well, who cares about her? Overrated, honestly.
Oh my gosh. Well, let's wrap this puppy up.
Let's do it.
So, to learn more,
Visit us on stateoftheozarks.net.
sign up for State of the Ozarks weekly email.
Like State of the Ozarks on Facebook.
Follow at Soto Media on Twitter.
Subscribe to Soto Media on YouTube.
Follow us on Instagram at State of the Ozarks.
Subscribe to this Been Thinking About podcast on iTunes.
And we thank you for listening to Been Thinking About, the State of the Ozarks podcast with Josh.
And Ethan,
And this is our Ozarks.
your community. Ta-da!
Time to eat.
Oops, sorry.